Hello, hello, hello. How's it going? Are you hearing any echo in my voice? Ah, perfect. Yeah, because I could hear an echo and I was confused. Why is that happening? I'm pretty sure something. Okay. Anyways, let's get ahead. Hello and welcome all to this React.js interview questions part two, I would say. So, sorry for the delayed start. I hope you all have kind of uh, what uh, sorry, I'm like looking in the messages. Okay, cool. I was literally here for a second, and then everything crashed. The whole tab crashed for me. So okay. Anyways, uh, let's go ahead. So, welcome again, everyone. Sorry about what happened there. So, okay. So this is part two of our React JavaScript interview prep. We, like not part, sorry, part one, but we done this session kind of a V1 in the previous week. And I realized, you know what? I think it would be nicer if we can kind of uh, I think it would be nicer. Sorry, I still hear an echo, which is really annoying to me. So I'm just trying to see if I can just turn off the sounds. Okay, I think this is better. Is the echo gone right now? Ah, perfect. I have no idea why StreamYard decided to do that today. I could hear the echo, but then I was like, you all couldn't. So I was like, maybe it's my issue. But then you all could hear the echo. It was a mess. Okay, to a very good start, but let's do it again from the top. Hello and welcome everyone. We are back for the, I would say, React JavaScript interview prep. This is V2 of whatever we have done in V1. V1 happened like in the last hack week. I, yeah, I would say it was popular based on the feedback. So I thought we'll go ahead and do the V2. We won't repeat everything that we did in V1. So fresh content, completely new. But the focus would be major on things that we skipped in V1. Not skipped, but more like we didn't have time to do it in V1. So I would say kind of like lead code style questions possibly. We did not do asynchronous JavaScript at any point in V1, so we would be focusing on that. We'd be focusing on more theoretical questions like, I don't know, how to do deep clone and what is microtask, macrotask, what is, let's see, you have event loop in JavaScript. So These would be our JavaScript focused. So session one, which is right now, and session two, which would be right after, these two would be based up on uh, JavaScript. And then, just like the last time, we would have uh, React, which would be in like session three and session two, which is happening tomorrow. Okay. So, yeah, our focus will be basically on all of that. And at any point you have any questions, do let me know. I will try my best to resolve it. And yeah, okay. So, I hope now my voice is clear. There is no double voice or anything. I've switched on the output. So, I wouldn't hear anything that comes up on my system. And yeah, okay. And if you have not registered for the session, I would request you all to please do. Here is the link in the chat. Please, please, please do register for the session. And yeah, any questions before we get started? Everything that we did in V1, I would say, which was, as you can say, last month, can be found right here on my GitHub. So here's the link for my GitHub. Also, if you have not registered, please do register. Here's the link to register. Okay. So I did make one change like 47 minutes ago, as you can see, and that was just to rearrange the folders. So I moved things that were in session four over to session three, kind of. And to understand what was in session three, session four, you'll have to watch all the videos that we have on of V1, which would be available on the Major League Hacking YouTube channel. Okay, so with that, let's get started. As I was saying, that at any point, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I'll try my best to answer all of them to the best of my abilities. I have, yeah, resolved everything. And now let's get started. Perfect. So let's get right into it. I have shared the link to the GitHub repository. So if you don't have it already on your local, if you want to, I don't know, do it with me, or if you want to have a local copy, there are multiple ways to do it. You can either download it as a zip and have it, but then you'll have to update it, or you can also create a fork of my repository on yours. You can push to yours, but yeah, and you can also pull from any changes that I do on mine. Okay. So yeah, the sessions are aimed at individuals who already have knowledge of JavaScript and React. It is not aimed at anyone who is like a beginner in terms of like these are interview questions. So you normally go and do the interview once you have built up that knowledge. So yeah, with that in mind, I would say I would not be going into too much details, too much basics. I would be kind of skimming over a few things from the perspective that yes, you understand, but that also doesn't mean that I will skip everything. I'll do my best to explain whatever I can. uh, Sorry. uh, I'll do my best to explain whatever I can. And yeah, if there are any questions about whatever we are doing, please feel free to ask in the chat, and I'll we can dive it in it together. Cool. Anything else that I'm missing? I don't think so. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead. So we'll start with some quick fire questions. So these quick fire questions are more like, actually, let's say this would be V2. These will be more to build up your understanding or like kind of remembrance. These would be to build up that remembrance of whatever we have done in V1. So, yeah, let's get started. We had done a lot of things with var. We had done a lot of like we had dived deep into objects. We had dived deep into like what console log kind of prints. So this would be kind of a refresher, and that's why the name quickfire. Okay, so this is the first one. And suppose you get this snippet in an interview and you're asked, okay, what is this going to print? I guess that would be kind of the aim of all the sessions that we do, that we have to kind of predict, I would say, what will be printed, like in all these quick fire questions. But at some point I'll kind of give a question where we'll be like, okay, if we have to implement this particular function, how would you do it? Okay, so quickfire, given this snippet, what will be printed? And also, just for folks who are new here, I normally try to go away from screen so that you can focus solely on screen. So yeah, don't worry too much about it. You will still hear my voice, and at any point you hear an echo again, let me know. Cool. Okay, and also we'll run these code in Node.js, which is on my local, or in the browser. Okay, so my favorite website is the website that we built actually as part of one of the previous Global Hack Weeks. So I'll be switching between this and this. If the font size is too small, let me know at any point. Okay, I guess this should be clear enough. Okay. So given this snippet, what will be printed? That is the question. We can try it out. We can try it out on the dev tools, but let's try and imagine. So we are talking about var. Okay, var, as we all know, that it is very, very tricky. Okay, var is in the function scope normally. So we know that var kind of is hoisted and it is in the function scope. Now based on these two information, and maybe if you were in part v1, then based on all of that, what do you think would be printed? We can definitely try it out. Okay, but let's try and imagine this. Var is in function scope normally. Okay, gets hoisted in a function scope. Here we have var a equals to 1, which is outside of the function, which means it is in a global scope. Okay, so it's in a global scope. Then inside uh, the function name, we console log a, a, which is this ideally. But then right below that, we have var a equals to 2. Now, var a, so that means we are reusing the same name. Okay, so if we are reusing the same name, then would it cause any kind of conflict between them? I guess that's what we need to think of. Now, the second information is that var is hoisted. Okay, the variable value, or like the variable name actually would be kind of hoisted, which means it will not physically change the location in code, but it would be available at some other part of the code, right? Which means it would be available at top of this uh, as a mental model. Okay, physically variables do not change places. Okay, they don't move up and down physically in code, but mentally you can assume that okay, this is kind of being described like var a, not the value, but var a declaration is available at the top right before this console log. So var a equals 1, and then this var a is hoisted, which goes right above the console log, but not the value. So it is hoisted, which means JavaScript knows that it exists, but it does not know. Okay, what it does not know is the value. So in that case, if the value is unknown, or I can say if the value is technically undefined, uh, or not defined at this point, where a will be initialized with undefined then. Okay, so that means this should print undefined. Then the code hits the part where a gets declared, and then it hits this console log, and now it is declared, so it should show 2. At least that's what I would go with. Okay, but what about this a equals 1 and this a equals 2? Both of them are the same variables, so why would this not print 1? I guess that's the question, right? Let's hit enter and see. Yes, the reasoning was correct. 1 here is printing out undefined, and 2 here is printing out 2. Okay, so this console log, the console log number 2 is printing out 2. So the concept here, like the following, like whatever I followed through, that was correct. The only thing that we are missing, in technical terms, is the shadowing. Okay, the word shadowing. So the inner var, okay, it hoists inside the function foo, and it shadows the outer a. Okay, so first log, this is going to hit the hoisted variable a. Okay, which is the local variable a, not the global variable a. And since at this point, because of hoisting, it starts with undefined until the variable gets declared, that's why one gets printed, one has undefined and two has like the variable value 2. What if we change this? Clear, reload. If I make this b, okay, and I make this particular one as b as well, what will happen now? Okay, so ideally, based on everything that we discussed, shadowing should not apply ideally, because these are completely different uh, kind of locations. So I guess the question is, what will a be printed as? Would it be printed as 1, or would it still be undefined? Let's find out. 1 will be 1, 2 will be 2. Yes. So yes, this is 100% correct that b would be 2. A is not going to be undefined anymore. Okay, a is not going to be undefined, ideally not undefined, unless I have some messed up. No, perfect. uh we can try out somewhere else as well. Huh. Now I'm confused. Okay, I did not have a reload. That's why I was like, a is not undefined, but a, no, this is correct, wrong one. That's why. Yeah, yeah, it should not be undefined. In my opinion, it should not be undefined. Now let's go here. Yeah, perfect. Oof. Yeah. Oof. A will not be undefined. And the reasoning is very simple. Right now, the concept of shadowing would not apply. Okay. When this is A and this is B. Okay. Yeah. Shadowing would not apply because they're completely different variables. Completely different variables. Hmm. That scared me for a minute there. I was like, really? My understanding is completely wrong about JavaScript? Yes. And that's the answer. A is not getting overwritten. So there are completely different variables. Think of it as completely different locations of storing the value. So what's happening in this scenario? This is a normal, very normal, I would say, uh, scoping. Okay. So from a functions perspective, forget about the first line for a bit. Okay. For the time being, just forget about the first line. From a function's perspective, whenever it hits a variable, it tries to look outside of itself. Okay, out goes to outer scope. It does not look inside. It checks for variable value to be outside of its current scope. That's why when you have functions nested inside functions, the inner function looks for a value outside of it. Okay, so now in this case, we are calling this function. Okay, at this point we are calling that function, and console log goes like, okay, I need to run this. Need to run this line, and I need to find where is this a. Is it available outside of my scope? Yes, it is. Here it is, and the value is 1. So just past, like, it would basically get printed as 1. Then it comes to the next line. It goes like, oh, I have like the variable b, which was hoisted, okay, right here, and it was undefined, now has a value of 2. Then the console log uh, gets hit, and it goes like, oh, I need b. Do I have the value of b? Yes, it is, and the value is currently 2, so it prints out 2. Okay, so this would be the simpler one, unless you have variables with the exact same names. And that's when you have problems. Cool. Uh, yeah. Now, I guess the next question that I have for you, if I change this var from var to let, what's going to happen? We will come back to this question in a moment. Let is a constant, you cannot change it. No, const is a constant, let is variable, as in like can be changed. So if it was const a, then we would have different problems. Okay, but right now I'm going for let, which allows changing, which actually takes away my next question, but that's fine. Okay, now let's hit enter and see what's going to happen. Now, var, we had that problem of shadowing. Let, would we have the problem of shadowing or not? That's what we need to find out. And okay, it says identifier a has already been declared. So now coming back to this, let is a constant, you cannot change it, but can you redeclare it? Now that depends. Okay, let's try it out again. Just we have cleared every issue. Okay, and if I take this and run it inside Node.js, so let me comment this bit out. Everything else is commented out, and we just have this much. Session 2/201.js. Okay, we have let a equals to 1, and then let a equals to 2, and we have to run this. And there we go. Okay, so it says reference error cannot access a before initialization, but it is pointing to this particular console log. Okay, so now I guess there would be a bit of confusion. Anyone wants to take a guess about what's happening, like in short and like in minimal words, I would say. uh Anyone wants to take a guess about what's happening? Okay, there's one answer, a can't be rehoisted. uh Nearly there. You're nearly there, I would say. Okay, cool. Let's understand. And to understand, what I'll do is I'll just remove this particular line. Okay. And now I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see, the error is like exactly the same, not eerily, exactly the same. So the top let a equals to 1 is not doing anything. Okay. And as you said about hoisting, the thing is that even let is getting hoisted, the problem or the difference, I would say, the difference here is we call the function goes like, okay, I need to run this part. uh, let is hoisted, but it is in a temporal dead zone. Okay, so when var is hoisted, it is hoisted and it gets the value of undefined. Okay, but let when hoisted is in a temporal dead zone. And when it is in a temporal dead zone, it goes like, if anyone calls me before I am assigned a value, I'm going to throw an error. Okay, and that is exactly what's happening at this point. Someone is calling the variable a, and inside this function, let, like, the variable a is kind of known that it exists in the temporal dead zone, and that throws an error. That is exactly why it throws an error. So we have a very, 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 very kind of different outcome in a way, that even though the idea of hoisting for let and const is the same, the place where they get hoisted, or not the place, the initialization of both of them as per the hoisting is slightly different. So var when gets hoisted, it goes like, okay, I am going to be hoisted and I'm going to be initialized with undefined. Uh, okay, and let is getting hoisted inside this function, but it is in the temporal dead zone, and it goes like, okay, I don't really have a value right now, so it's going to throw an error. Now going back to our question, if I make this let a and I make this let of b and I print out b, I'm going to copy this just to ensure that I don't make that mistake like last time. Let a, let b, and okay, perfect. So now in this case, is this going to throw or not? That's our question. And we end up with let a equals 1, 1, 1, and 2, 2. Okay, so again, in this case, it does very similar to what we saw with var. The only difference is that let is block scoped, function scoped, or scoped inside, I would say, the curly brackets. Okay, so you can literally have just empty curly brackets, and that also takes care of let most of the times. Okay, this is a block ideally. Okay. Mm. uh yeah, so let is block scoped, and yep, here we have an answer. Yes, let is block scoped, and it gets hoisted to the top of the block, and it is in temporal dead zone. It does not have any value. It's not initialized with undefined, which is a valid JavaScript data type. uh, and if it gets called before uh, it has been assigned a value, it throws. And the last iteration would be const, and this time I'm going to say const a, and this is a, and I'm going to copy this, reload. So I've const a equals 1, which is a constant declaration of a variable, and then I'm calling it here. And const a equals to 2, which is constant declaration, and I'm calling it at this part. Now the question is, will it throw? As in like throw an error. Not throw, but throw an error. What else is it going to throw? I know, right? And then we'll come back. Once we have done that, we will come back to this particular question. Okay, let's hit enter and try it. And cannot A access A before initialization. Someone is angry. Who is angry here? Uh, Similar concept as with like let that we saw. Error is nearly same. We're trying to access A, and at this point, is A known, unknown, what's going on? Uh, I'd just say that, yep, very, 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 very similar. Yeah. Hmm. I'm trying to think how can we explain it in an easy manner. Okay. So basically, in all these parts, hmm, whenever you know about a variable and you are trying to access that variable before it is being assigned a value, it is going to throw in terms of let and in terms of const. Okay, in terms of var, behaves very differently. Okay, in var behaves differently. Let and const, they are as good as saying that this top one doesn't exist right now. All I know about is this inner one, which leads to this kind of problem. Okay, because like, oh, I know that this variable has been defined, will have some value at some point. Right now I don't have any value for these uh, let and const declaration of that variable, so I am going to kind of throw an error because you're trying to call me before I get a value. Okay, that's the simplest way to remember let and const. Var is completely different mental model, and that's why avoid var. uh I guess my question is, where did you choose a new variable? Like, can you share that snippet and we can try and debug it together? uh and coming back to this particular question, what if we pass it as a parameter? So do you mean like we have let a and then a and then a here, something like this? Just waiting for a yes or no. Okay, uh let me copy this snippet which has been, okay, it's not allowing me to copy the snippet, interestingly. uh hmm, okay. um, Okay, so I'll go with this particular question first, and then okay, I finally have been able to kind of copy it. But okay, I understand what you're trying to do. So let's see. Let a equals 1 function with a parameter a. We are doing a console log of like 1 and a. Then we have let a equals to 2, which has been declared, and then we have console log, and then we call like this one with a. Now this a would refer to what is the nearest a that it can find. It would refer to this one. Okay, now the question is what's going to happen if I hit enter. Okay, so ideally it will I guess it would throw an error, but it would not be a temporal dead zone error. It would be a completely different error in my opinion. Let's try it out. I hit enter and it says identifier a has already been declared. Let me reload and hit enter. Perfect, same error. So now I'm happy that yes. Okay, so what's happening in this situation? So function foo has a parameter a, and let a is kind of being declared. So this variable is clashing with this variable. Okay, so what you're saying is that you are literally doing kind of okay, you're kind of saying that I want to do this, okay, or something like this, I would say. That's what the error was right before. Hmm. Yeah. So what you're trying to say is that I in the same block I am redeclaring or yeah declaring the same variable again and again, and that is not allowed. Okay, so JavaScript does not allow a parameter name to be redeclared with let or const in the same function scope. Okay, so they have to be different. What we could have done is if we just remove the keyword let from this one, now we are saying that let a equals to 1. 1 is passed as an input. We have console log 1 and a, which I think would print out 1 because 1 is an input, and then we change it to 2, and then this should print out 2. Let's try it out. And yep, that's exactly what happens. Yeah, cool. So I guess that also answers technically, yeah, this question. And I guess one question that I'm going to ask you all is, so what is this particular A declared with? Is it declared with var? Is it declared with let? Is it declared with const? And without you wasting too much time, I'll say neither of those. Even not if even I'm not 100% sure what is it declared with. I would say it behaves very similar to let. Okay, redefining. Okay, so we are saying that the parameters that are passed, they behave very similar to pass, like creating a let variable kind of. Okay, ideally they are not syntactically, they are not let const or var. We are not saying that, but they behave very similar to having a let variable, like kind of, yeah, let. Okay, so it feels like let, it works like let because they are not const, because they are mutable. As you can see, it started as 1 and then I changed it to 2, so they are mutable, but they are kind of available only inside this function, nowhere outside. Okay, so this a is available only inside this function, not outside. uh, so I would say it's kind of like a pre-declared local variable, which often feels like let, but with some rules around, oh, if you're declared inside a function as a parameter, so there are some, yeah, some rules around that. Okay, cool. Now coming back to this question, I'll try and type it out. So I guess the question is const, I'll type it out here, const c equals to 3, then we have a function, uh, sorry, this one, because yeah, there was test2, and then I'm going to do console.log of, I will just say that this is 1 comma c, and then const c equals to 31, and this is 2 colon comma c, and I presume you want to call this function test2, right? Something like this, because that's ideally what we're trying to get to. And actually, without me running this, I guess you can answer that based on whatever we have done so far already. So forget about this one. If you have exactly like, forget about, yeah, this line. Okay, imagine this doesn't exist. Just see the function, and what you are seeing is that there is this c, okay, which is declared. So inside this function, it is known that c as a variable exists, and but it does not have a value yet, and you're trying to kind of log it out. So you're calling that variable. So do you think it will exist? It would, or would it be in some sort of temporal dead zone, or not known? Like, what do you think? Take your best guess. TDZ, yes, right? Like, that's what I would assume as well. And yeah, that's what we ideally actually reach out to. So if I, yep, clear out everything, hit enter, yeah, the outside C at this point doesn't really matter, okay, because the inside C, okay, that one is like, okay, I know inside this function, inside this block, this variable has been declared, but I don't have a value yet. So if someone calls me before it gets a value, I'm going to throw an error. Okay, this one would work, because now at this point you're saying that, okay, there is a const c outside, but no one is kind of calling it or doing anything, and inside a function block, as I said, like every curly bracket is technically a block. Inside this block, c is declared. So this line goes to the nearest c that it can find, a declared c that it can find, and finds this particular c with value 31, and that's what gets printed. Okay, okay, let's try this. I am trying to understand the question. So what if you redefine a var that is defined outside of a block as a const inside of a block? Let's try. So var a, so I'll try it out here. So you're saying, like, let's say this is var a equals to 3. What if you redefine oh no, that is defined as a const outside. So const a equals to 3. And now inside here, I have var a equals to 31. And I want to print like a here. And I want to print a here. Something like this. Oh, outside var, inside const. So outside var and inside const. So this. So 3 and 31. Okay. I'm going to assume, yes, this is what you want. Okay. I am going to ask you again. Will the outside var matter if you are inside a block and a variable has been declared? So we have declared a variable a inside a block, And we know like const and let, whenever we say block scope, that means they are known inside that block. And at line number 4, they get a value, like a gets a value, but at line number 3, it is being called. Do you think it would actually have the value of 3, or would it throw? Because possibly it would move to a temporal dead zone. I would say, based on every understanding that we have built so far, I think it would go to temporal dead zone. Okay. And let's try. That's all I can say. I could be wrong. But based on my understanding, I would say I think it should give us a similar error that we have seen so far, which is, oh, it, it should go in temporal dead zone because inside this block, this A is known. Let's see. Maybe my understanding is wrong. Oof, no. Yeah, okay. So the idea still remains the same. The outside var at this point doesn't matter because in the inside we have literally said that, okay, there we go. There is your variable, which I know exists, but does not have a value yet. Temporal dead zone. Okay. I guess that's enough about var, const, and let. I'd say we have built our understanding too much about, okay, what's temporal dead zone? Where does var work? Where does const work? Where does let work? Parameters. Uh, let's go for okay, quick fire 2. Okay, so quick fire 2. The question is that we have an object, and in this object, I am trying to basically uh, create a name, an inner parameter, like inner object, which will have name and get name. Okay, so the name which is outside, the outer, the one that is inside is inner, and I'm trying to console log one, which is object obj dot inner, okay, dot get name, which should return the this dot name. Okay, then I have another variable where I'm saying object dot inner dot get name. Now get name is a function, so this is going to be a function call, and I'm doing 2 as fn. I'm calling the function. Okay, so now the question is, what's going to be printed for 1 and what is going to be printed for 2? Any guesses, anyone? Okay, so I guess the problem here would be around the idea of the word this. Okay, what does the keyword this refer to? Okay, I guess that is where the confusion would be. So, like step one, let's understand. So, this is a very special name which ideally tries to basically say that what is the nearest, let's say, key. Okay, what's the nearest key that I can find? Okay, I need that key. So now, based on that understanding, do you think what do you think this will print? Okay, so the keyword this refers to where can I find the nearest possible key. Okay, so I have one answer. Second would throw an error. uh let's try. Okay, I hit enter, The one prints inner, two prints nothing. Really? Really? But there will be a slight difference based on where this gets run. So in Node.js, if I run this exact same snippet, and I have only quickfire 2, which is uncommented. So let me run session 2. It would be printed as undefined. Okay. So browser would have a slightly different output. Uh, but the idea is still the same, that they are undefined. It is not known. Okay. Uh, okay, cool. So now let's understand what's going on and why did this have a difference. Okay, cool. So as I said, like the idea of this keyword is what is the nearest object or the nearest key. Okay, what's the nearest key that I can find. So when we call this object dot inner dot get name as a function call, okay, so like this curly bracket, this means that we are calling the function, right? This is a proper function call, or if it's an inside an object, uh, it's called as methods. Okay, functions are inside an object will be called as methods. So on console log 1, okay, we are literally doing a method call. Okay, and we're saying that, okay, get me like the get name. I'm calling the method, which means it has to resolve into some value, ideally some sort of value. In our case, get name gets resolved to return this dot name. Now this dot name, it tries to find this key name and what is the nearest, uh, or actually let's take it one step back. This will resolve towards the nearest object. Okay, this will resolve towards the nearest object. The nearest object is this inner object. So this becomes kind of like the highlighted object. So the value of this is this highlighted object, and then in that highlighted object is name defined. Yes, that name does exist, and the value is inner, and that is why in the first case it returns inner. Now let's talk about the second case. I'm saying that object.inner.getName. In this case, we are copying a function reference into this variable fn. We're not calling the function, we are copying the reference, saying that, okay, someone might call this at some point. But as soon as you copy the reference, this keyword loses the nearest object. Okay, there's no object attached to it anymore. All it is, okay, it's like you have seen those videos where people are standing in a queue, and then the last person does some action or says some word, but between people when it moves through, the first person does completely different or draws completely different thing, something like that. So the idea I would say would be very similar. Okay, so I have this object.inner.getName, a function, a reference has been copied, but it loses context. Okay, think of it as losing the complete context of, okay, what is the nearest object. Okay, and since it doesn't know, when the function gets called, it goes like, actually I have no idea what the keyword this refers to, what is, which object are we talking about, what's going on. uh, and that is why it loses the complete context. Okay, and it returns undefined. So in this case, it does not print anything because kind of I'd say it's a browser thing. But if I use strict, and now I'm not sure 100% if this is going to work out as I'm expecting it, but I think it should. Yes, okay, perfect. It does work, which I guess brings up the question, what is this use strict? So if you are using React every day, And you have seen strict mode. This is not exactly that. But JavaScript has its own thing called as use strict. Okay, which means that it is going to be a very strictly type, and you can find all details about use strict uh, in MDN, I guess I would say. Yeah. So there's something called a sloppy mode, which is not an official term, but it is. So yeah, sloppy mode, it kind of, it does not throw error at every point it can find. But in strict mode, we eliminate some of JavaScript's silent errors by changing them to throw errors. Fixes mistake that makes it difficult for JavaScript engines to perform optimization. Strict mode code can sometimes be made to run faster than identical code not in strict mode. And also this. Okay, cool. So, oh yeah, this is what I did. Perfect. So yeah, so there's something called in JavaScript itself called as strict mode, which allows you to write JavaScript which is more strict in terms of what it is doing. Okay, so we saw that if we are not in strict mode, this does not return anything or returns undefined. But in strict mode, this actually throws an error and goes like, nope, you are not allowed to do this. I think this would work inside Node.js. I've never tried. Oh yes, it works inside Node.js as well, and it throws an error rather than silently saying, "Oh yeah, it's undefined. I don't know about it, so it's undefined." Okay, cool. Coming back to the keyword this, so this is basically attached to the nearest object. When you call it, then in that case it finds the nearest object, and then it tries to get that parameter, like get that function. The function is saying get me this parameter, and it returns. When you are copying the function reference over to something, then it loses the context of this object, and yeah, that's why it doesn't print anything or returns undefined. Okay. uh, what else can I say? I guess the final point in this case would be that the keyword this is based on how the function gets called and not where it was technically defined. Okay. And if you want, if you really want to kind of copy over the reference to the nearest object, then you can do something called as bind. Dot bind. So dot bind is going to bind the, or say that, okay, if there is a keyword this used inside the function, then I want you to ensure that it the keyword this gets binded to object.inner, which means like this particular object. Okay, this gets binded to this particular object. So now this should not throw an error. Mm, yeah, perfect. Now the question is, can I then say that, you know what, instead of binding to inner, what if you bind to just the object? Okay, like this complete object, and then it becomes outer. Let me clear, reload, and hit enter. Outer. Okay, so what have we done? So we are saying that we need to preserve the reference of the keyword this. This refers to the nearest object that it can find. Object is nothing but key value pairs. Okay, so we'll take it from that simple aspect. This refers to the nearest object. Depending on how it gets called, it finds the nearest object and returns the value of whatever, like the key that you have asked it for. If you copy over the function reference, so if you not call the function, difference is this curly brackets versus non-curly brackets. If you don't call the function, then the keyword this loses the reference to the object. So it goes like, okay, if you now call this particular function and you have not said which object, which key value pair it refers to, it will be like undefined, I don't know about it. Or if you're in strict mode, it would throw an error. But if you wanted to preserve the reference or the value, you can say that, okay, I want you to ensure that whenever you get called, the keyword this refers to some object. That some object can be obj.inner, which means inside this obj, go to the inner key and bind the this keyword to that particular object. Or you can say that like something else, you can say completely different thing. You can say, oh, actually bind to the whole object. Now when this gets called, this function gets called, it tries to go to get name, so object.inner.get name. Get name says, oh, this means this whole object, and in that whole object, is there a name keyword? Yes, there is. And what is the value? Outer. Returns outer. Okay. And I guess people can make it more confusing with respect to, let's say, what if actually I say that there is completely different, okay, completely different, and that has a name of MLH, and I need a comma here. Now I want to bind this to object dot completely different. So based on everything that we have learned so far, would this print MLH or no? Yes. Okay. Yeah, it is the same. But what if this doesn't exist? Like, let's say this is GHW is the key, and I've bound to this particularly completely different. In that case, ideally, it should not return me anything. Okay, it is literally undefined because this particular key, okay, which particular key, get name, is going to return me this dot name. This refers to completely different. And is there a name variable, name key in that object? Not really. And that is why it is undefined, even in strict mode. Okay, because syntactically it is undefined, literally undefined. Okay, so that's about this binding and understanding like what is this, what is the word binding, what, like the word bind is not very scary, I would say. Okay, it is not scary. It just refers to uh, tell me what's the nearest object, and I will literally like clutch to it. Okay, it's like saying that, yep, clutch to this nearest object, and whenever you are called, uh, yeah, use that object as your reference. Like only think of that particular object, only see the values and the keys and the values of that particular object, and return me the answer based on if you can find that key in that particular object. Okay, any questions so far on whatever we did? I hope it made sense, especially with like everything that we kind of try to do. Waiting, waiting just to see if there is any question, basically. Okay, cool. No questions. Let's move on to the next one. Okay. Uh, very simply, so I have an array fns. It's an empty array. I have a for loop. Okay, And inside that for loop, I am using the keyword let to initialize I, which is equal to 0. It should be, it needs to be run up until I is less than 3 and I plus plus. Now, fns.push refers to like trying to push something in the array. The only difference is there is this empty function, like this is short form for declaring an empty function. So we have declared an empty function, and now the question is, uh, not the question, sorry. Then the idea is that it is trying to push something inside in that array. Yeah, I would say yes, in that array. And yeah, I guess that's it. But when it is pushing, it is multiplying it by 10. Okay. Then we do fns.for each. So for each, and we are saying that there is this anonymous function that, look, not anonymous anymore. We have a function that we are creating, which is going to print out the console log of that same parameter or of the same function. Okay. Uh, so very confusing in terms of what's going on. Let's see, like what would be printed, or would this be printed or not? Would this throw an error? Like what are we doing? Okay, any guesses, anyone? Okay, cool. So if you have to understand the question first, okay. Okay, there is one answer. It says infinite loop. Hopefully not, but let's see. Let's go over here, paste it, reload, clear, paste it. Yeah, and now let's hit enter. It prints out 0, 10, and 20. Okay, it sounds about right, but let's first understand the question, like what's going on, because yep, that syntax is very weird to understand, right? So in an interview, you might be given weird syntaxes like this, but you have to break it down into understandable pieces. We'll start with the first line. Let fns equals to empty array. So we're literally creating an empty array. An array can store anything, which means it can store numbers in, it can store strings, it can store booleans, it can store function definitions of functions. Okay, so it can store functions. Array can store anything. Now the next line, for let I equals to 0, I less than 3, I plus plus. We are saying that I want to run the block 3 times, starting from 0 going up to 2, because I needs to be less than 3. Okay, and at every iteration I'm going to increase I. So I equals to 0, then I equals to 1, then I equals to 2, and hopefully after that, when I reaches 3, uh, this would it be false. Okay, this would be false, and if it is false, it needs to come out of the loop. But when it is inside the loop, what we are saying, okay, so inside the loop we are saying that I want to add something to the array. You can add anything to the array. As I said, it can also, you can also add functions to the array. So here we are literally adding an arrow function. Okay, and in each loop we are saying that, and actually I can try and print it out. You can do console.log. Hopefully I'm able to print it out. Fns. And I can use backticks I and fns. Yep. Okay, cool. Hit enter. So there we go. I equals to 0. It has one function. Okay, it has one function. Even though it says like there are three, it literally has one function only. So what I can do is, let me comment this part out, or actually replace it with this one. And let's run this. See, so I equals to 0, there is one function. I equals to 1, there are two functions. I equals to 2, there are three functions in the array. Okay. So all this one is doing, it is pushing a function definition inside uh, the FNS array. Perfect. So far, so good. Okay. It is only now one thing to remember. It is storing the function. It is not running the function. That is the slightest difference. It is storing a function. It is not running a function. Okay, running means to actually evaluate the value, but storing is just like, oh yeah, this function needs to will be called at some point. But whenever you store the function, uh, actually we'll come back to that. Now, when are we running the function? We are running the function at this particular point when we do the fns dot for each. Okay, we are saying that go through each item in the fns array. Okay, loop over them, and then for each item there, which is like fn, each item there, I'm calling console log, which means it needs to be logged, but that each item, or which refers to one function at a time, is getting called. Okay, so now we are calling the function. Whenever we call a function, it needs to evaluate, right? So far, is the syntax of the question understandable? What have we done in the syntax? What's going on? We have said that there is function definition being stored inside the array. It's not being called yet. It gets called on this last line where we are going through each item in the fns array, and we are saying that, okay, now I want you to call that function. Cool. So far, that's what we have understood from the syntax, and that is the syntax. Okay, this is what the syntax is. Now comes the part where these values need to be will get printed, right? So now function fn gets called. Fn gets called, which means it is calling this function anonymous. And this function anonymous, what is that doing? Okay, that function anonymous is literally evaluating I multiplied by 10. But what is I? So for every function, it is storing the value of I. Okay, at that instant when it was pushed to the array. So when the first function was pushed in the array, the value of I was 0. So 0 multiplied by 10, 0. When the second function was pushed to the array, then the value of I was 1. So 1 multiplied by 10, 10. And then when the third function was pushed to the array, the value of I was 2. And that's why we have 2 multiplied by 10, 20. So is this clear in terms of what it is doing? So if given kind of this question, similar questions, the concept that you have to maintain is that, okay, I have an array. I may be looping over one item, 10 item, 100 items. I am storing the function definition. Okay, whatever else happen doesn't matter. We're storing function definition. And when the call is happening, at that point, what was the value of I, for example? Okay, what was the value of the variable that we have? And that's what's getting stored. Cool. Any questions, anyone? Okay. And now, uh, of course, the reason why people hate me is if I'm taking an interview, I'll be like, what if we change this var? Sorry, this let to var. Now what's going to happen? Hmm. See this evil smile on my face. Hmm. So that evil smile is because uh like everything else that we understood about the function, like that remains the same. The only problem is when it gets called. Okay, when it gets called, what's happening? Okay, so in the previous version, when we had let, okay, I was saying that when it gets called, what was the value of I, and I said like it is storing the value of I at that instant. But the official term I would say is that in over each iteration, sorry, over each iteration, it is creating a new value of I. Let creates a new value of I. Okay, and each arrow function closes over its own version, or like its version of I that was created for that particular iteration. Like that is the idea of closure, that at that particular iteration, instance, or whatever you say, what was the uh, value of I. Okay, and yeah, over each iteration, since a new I gets created, because remember that in a block, okay, in a block you can redeclare the same variable, like not exactly redeclare, but over each iteration you are literally saying that yep, I have a completely new function to look at. I am like I creates a new variable on each iteration. Okay, but now if I switch that over to var, okay, uh, now, there is one change. When I switch over to var, var is not going to create a new value at each iteration. It is going to create a shared variable, and that variable gets updated every time. And we end up with 30, 30, 30. Okay. And I can reload, clear, run it again. Yes, 30, 30, 30. Because during each iteration, it's like having a shared mailbox. So during each iteration, that shared mailbox is getting updated. When we use the keyword let inside this for loop, we are creating a new mailbox at every instance, like every point we're creating a new mailbox. And because like, and that is why this function closes over the version or the iteration or the mailbox that was created when this function was called. But in terms of in when we use the keyword var to declare the variable, we have one shared mailbox, which during each iteration, the function is like, okay, I need to basically say that whenever I'll be called, whenever this I needs to get resolved, we'll go to the same shared mailbox and get the value. And you would see, like, someone can also say that, oh, what if we have let I equals to 0 declared outside? Okay, that would also result in the same thing, because you have declared I outside of the loop. Okay, and you're reusing that I, so it's like using the shared I variable. Okay, conceptually you are saying that uh yeah, I'm using the same I that was declared outside, and I am changing or updating or pulling the value out of that shared mailbox. So after all the iterations have completed, this I becomes what? Does it become one or two or three? It becomes three. Okay. Oh yeah, one more thing that I actually did not explain. So this one becomes three. Okay, rather than two. So it does not end at 2 into 10 20. It becomes 3, and it kind of violates this condition, right? And I would say in our V1, we actually went over a lot of details about what's happening. Okay. So in terms of evaluation, it increments first and then comparison happens. Even though in terms of writing, we write it comparison first and then increment. But actually, increment happens first and then the comparison happens. And when you have, I think we had also seen, what's the word? A debugger, right? We had also added a debugger, I think, if I remember. Yes, I think we had. Uh, Something like this. Hmm. And we had seen the call stack. I'm pretty sure. Yes, I remember now that we had seen all of these things. Like what's the variable I, what it resolves to. So at this point, yes, we had seen that I is 0. Okay. And then I step over, then it goes to increment first, and then it does the comparison, and then it does the push. Okay. So increment first, which means that I becomes 2. Sorry, from 0 it goes to 1. Sorry, my bad. uh, and then it compares, is 1 less than 3? Yes, that is true, so it goes to the push and console log. Then it increments again, so from 1 it should become 2. So what? No, 0 1 and 2. At some point it should become 2. Yeah, there we go. Prints out the 2. Perfect. Now debugger, increment first, comparison, and it comes out of the scope. Increment first, so I has changed to 3. Okay, 0 1 2 and 3. Increment first and then comparison. After incrementation, I has become 3, and we all of them are looking at this exact I, which is 3. And when we run this all, we end up with 30 30 and 30. Okay, because I has incremented first and then the condition has been checked. And that's always the case. If I change this over to a let, okay, the idea would still technically remain the same. But now we are looking at this new thing called as block. Previously, it was that global, if you see. It was a global variable I, which means you have one shared mailbox and everyone is updating that. But now we have a block scope variable created because of the let keyword, and that has the value of I set as 0. And then we'll have a new block created, which will have the value of I as 1. Then we'll have a new block created after, like, increment still happens first and then comparison happens. Okay, block has been created, increment has happened, then comparison is now happening, and it says, oh yes, that is still true. Again, after this, increment will still happen. Okay, increment happens first, comparison happens. Now this comparison results in a false, and we come outside of the for loop, and now we are going to the for each. And now when we go to the for each, the first one would have said that, oh, what was the block scope variable when I was kind of created in a way. And at that point, the block scope variable, like I was of the value 0. So 0 multiplied by 10, then 1, and then 2. Okay. Always increment happens first, then comparison happens. And in terms of when we say let variables, okay, let variables are going to be block scope, they will be incremented and then compared, but they'll have their value retained. In terms of var, we create a global variable. It's like a shared mailbox, and it goes and kind of increments the same value again and again and again. And because increment happens first, we end up with I equals to 3. And when the each of the function gets called, okay, it goes and sees, oh, I is 3, let me just update it, like do the multiplication based on the value 3, and we see 30 30 30. Okay, any questions, anyone? Hopefully, I've cleared every aspect of it, right? And one final, I'm waiting for any questions, but meanwhile, I guess a very final one is going to be this quick fire. So we have kind of revisited everything, we have cleared off all the concepts. And this is a concept that we did at the start of today's session. Okay, what will this do? Will this print something? Will this have a value? Or what? Mhm. So this should result in an error because remember the concept of temporal dead zone. Okay, temporal dead zone. Syntax doesn't matter, the idea matters. The idea is that x at this point, okay, we are calling x and we are trying to understand what is the value of x before uh, it gets kind of assigned. Okay, so this should ideally result in this error. Yes. Okay. Hmm. And depending on, I think, where it is called, it might have slightly different output. Let's confirm that once. Yes, here cannot access x before initialization. Reference error, x is not defined. We had debated about this for like quite some time in our v1 sessions, but yeah, this, I would say, this is the most accurate output you will have. And the concept is temporal dead zone. So we're trying to find the value of x, or like type of, what does type of do? It returns me what is the type of my value. Okay, not the type of variable, it returns a type of value. In this case, there is a variable x defined where the value has not been assigned. Okay, so type of x is going to say that what is the value of this particular variable x, not known. Okay, since it is not known, it is technically kind of undefined, but because it's going to be redeclared with, or declared with the keyword let, uh, my block knows that, oh, x is declared but the value is not known, let me put it in temporal dead zone. Okay, so x is now in temporal dead zone. So whenever we call x at this point, it goes like, actually, I don't know, it is in temporal dead zone, I don't have the value yet. Okay, and that's why we get this particular error, because it's in temporal dead zone. So this is a very, very, very tricky one. Like, okay, which one will evaluate? But always remember, things on the right side of equals evaluate, okay, before they are assigned. So I guess you can divide this one into like two parts. Part one is that whenever this runs inside a function, outside a function, doesn't matter. Whenever this runs, it knows that x as a variable exists and its value is not defined. So let me put it in temporal dead zone. And when this line gets called, console log of x, it goes like, okay, can we go and find x? It goes and finds x. X is in temporal dead zone. So, and the right hand side evaluates first. It goes like, actually, type of x, I don't know because x is in temporal dead zone. And there we go. It throws this error. Okay, it throws the error even before it actually can define it. Okay, so kind of very tricky, but yeah, we got through there. Perfect. So I guess that's all the questions and everything that we could have learned. I hope, like, if in any interview you get questions about anything related to a variable which you can say that, okay, this will be in temporal dead zone, this will be initialized as undefined. I'm 100% sure that, I don't know, this outer variable doesn't matter because the inner one is a let and it will be in temporal dead zone, so on and so forth. I hope you are able to answer all those questions. Even about the this keyword, what it is binding, this keyword only refers to the nearest object, and that's it. That's all the concepts that you need to know, and from that you can build up on it. uh, in terms of this whole thing, we know that, yeah, arrays can store anything. They can also store function definitions, and they only need to evaluate when the function is called. In a for loop, it's always increment first and then compare. uh, so yeah, that's, I would say, also very important to remember: increment first, compare after. And yep, that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do git add all git commit dash m, and this is session 1 of v2, and git push. And you can get all these questions on my GitHub page. Okay, there we go. Now, oof, and with that out of our way, let's start with 202.js. And now my focus is going to be on asynchronous JavaScript. Because while synchronous JavaScript is confusing, wait until you start asynchronous. And then you're like, okay. Any questions, anyone, with respect to whatever we have done so far? Hopefully, I've not missed anything. I think I've answered all the questions. Okay, let's go. So, oof, let's start with a very simple uh, event loop. Start with the very simple event loop. And now let's understand things. Okay. Actually, before we go to the keyword event loop, I'm going to say, like, what was I naming it before? I forgot. Snippet 1. I can just do snippet 1. Still session 1. This should also be session 1 v2 exercise 1, session 1 v2 snippet 1. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to do is going to be console.log of printing 1, not exclamation 1. Then we have set timeout, and this is going to be just console.log of 2, and I want this to run at 0, and then we'll have console.log of 3. I guess this is one of those classic problems everyone knows the answer to, right? Well, that would have been tricky to debug. This is not snippet 1. Oh, I forgot how I used to write. So this would be 1, session 1 v2, and this would be order of logs. Okay, cool. Given this question, my question to you all is, what will be printed and in which order? Okay, and this forms the basis of event loop, I would say. Yeah. So I have one, and then I have a set timeout. Hopefully the syntax is correct for set timeout. I think it is correct. Yeah, I think it is correct. At least that's what it looks like to me, that it is correct. Uh, so set timeout, which basically says to run something after some time. In this case, the time is 0, and then we have console.log 3. So I have 1, 2, and 3. And if I hit enter, what would be the order of logs getting printed? And while this seems like a very simple question, this forms the base of everything asynchronous. Okay. Everything about asynchronicity comes from like this kind of concept. And from and everything about event loop is like comes from this particular part of code. Okay. This particular type of code, not part of code, type of code. And now I hit enter. I was hoping to see 1, 2, and 3, but instead I have 1, 3, undefined, and 2. Okay. So the ordering is kind of messed up. Okay. We'll have to understand why. Okay. So let's start from like some very simple example, or let's try to create this particular mental model, which would be a very, very, very simple and very, very basic mental model. Okay. Now, the basic mental model says that step one, synchronous tasks are run, and then step two, asynchronous tasks are run. Okay. Now, what is synchronous in our code? In our code, uh, the synchronous part is anything which is not a timeout, promise, async, await, or anything. Okay. Synchronous part of code is outside of all these special keywords which add some sort of delay. Okay. uh, I know, right? Random between 1, 3, and 2, and 1, 2, and 3. Would it be random? 1, 3, and 2. It's always 1, 3, and 2. Okay, at least to me. Mm, hmm. I can try one more thing here, which I was trying right now. If I do let I equals to this, actually 10 times, in my opinion, it should always be 1, 3, and 2. Okay. The concept is, don't worry, we all are learning. Okay, please, don't worry about that. Uh, can we have a wait in set timeout? I didn't know that. I don't think so, right? I don't think you can have a wait in set timeouts. Yeah, at least I don't know that. But anyways, coming back. So 1, 3, and 2. And if I rerun this whole loop like 10 times, I still see 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, like kind of 10 times. And then 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay, which should be like 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now without the for loop, let's focus on the simple one. So 1, 3, and 2. Uh, why? And what's going on? So synchronous code always runs first. Like that's the basic mental model that we have to pick up. What is synchronous? Anything without set timeout, anything without the keyword async await, anything without promises, anything which kind of can add a delay would be done later. Anything which has no delays whatsoever associated with it will be run first. And that is why we see console.log 1, like basically 1 gets printed first. And then what's the next synchronous task without any sort of delay associated? It's this console log 3. And then we have the set timeout, okay, which has some delay associated with it, and that delay is of 0 milliseconds. You can say it should run instantly, but instantly after the synchronous task has been run, okay. And that is the mental model, that things which are which kind of have some sort of delay associated with them will be run after all the synchronous tasks have finished. Okay. So with that mental model, we can like be 100% sure. Like even if you have here, I don't know, 1,000 different things. So if I do console.log of 1, 2, 3 on top, and then I have 4, then I have 5, and now I'm going to switch on Copilot because I am lazy to type. I'm going to say JavaScript console log of 6. Come on, understand the context, please. 7. Okay, that's also fine. 8, 9, 10. Perfect. So now this is the question. I'm glad it gave me that set timeout again. That's a very nice touch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I feel between this and this, it could be anything. Or possibly it would be this first and then this first. Let's try it out. Set timeout runs, set timeout runs again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Set timeout runs, set timeout runs again. And I can do this like multiple times or many iterations, many iterations. The answer still remains the same. Okay. All the synchronous tasks, all the synchronous lines, anything which does not have any timeout associated with it, runs first. Then set timeout runs, but the order matters. And at least that's what it looks like to us. That first we'll have the first set timeout that was declared at needs to run at 0th, and then the next timeout that was declared, which needs to kind of run after that. Okay, it was declared at 0th. Okay. Mm. Okay, cool. I guess that kind of uh, that kind of brings us to the first bit or end of first bit of the synchronous and asynchronous tasks. Okay, so we'll never have the set timeout runs again before set timeout runs, even though both of them are scheduled to be run at 0, because there is something called as a queue. So that's the second thing that I want to establish. So there's something called as queue. Step one. Now we have to learn two concepts. Number one, uh, all the synchronous tasks run first, and then comes the asynchronous tasks that run. Asynchronous in this case is set timeout runs and set timeout runs again. Both of them are saying that we want to run at exactly 0 milliseconds, but that 0 milliseconds does not mean that run immediately. All that means is you are now going to be queued to be run as soon as all my synchronous tasks finish. Okay, so synchronous tasks finish, then in that queue, the first one to enter was set timeout runs, and the second one to enter was set timeout runs again. So that is why the print order would be set timeout runs and then set timeout runs again. Okay. I think this is better. So, is that kind of clear to everyone? Hmm? Any questions, anyone? Uh, I am curious. I don't understand the question here. Sorry. Okay. So I'll wait for like some description on that question. But meanwhile, I guess we are nearly on time. And before I go into the asynchronous, async await promise keywords and about more details of event loop, I'll take a break. We'll take a break because the next session that I have is literally right after. Okay, so this is a question. Okay, so is set timeout itself an async function, or does it only call the function asynchronously? So inside the function, you're saying that, sorry, inside set timeout, that particular function, is that asynchronous or set timeout itself is asynchronous? To be very frank, I would say I would not 100% sure about this answer. As in, like, I don't remember from top of my head in terms of the syntax itself. I would say set timeout itself is technically synchronous, but just run or executed in a different queue. Okay, so we have two queues of tasks, you can say. The first queue is to run all the immediate task. And whenever this keyword set timeout is encountered by JavaScript, it says you go to the next queue or this different queue. Okay. And in that queue, you go first, and then it encounters this particular line. So it goes like, okay, you go second in that queue. So set timeouts itself, I would say, is synchronous in a way. But this would be a very good question to Google. Is set timeout synchronous? I have no idea what all of this is. Nope, I'm not. I guess this. Oh, it is an asynchronous function. Okay, as that's what it says. Yeah, that's a very good question. I never thought about it as whether the function is. I'd say. Hmm. Wow. Say I'm learning this today myself. Uh, Set timeout is async if we put an await. Now that is a very good question, but I don't think you're allowed to put an await on a function. So you cannot put await before the keyword set timeout, right? I don't think that's a syntax. So if I get rid of all of this, okay, if I can't put await here, as far as I can understand, because await can only be inside an async function. Hmm. So that is clearly not a right JavaScript syntax. This can be async, maybe. Or can I say this can be awaited? This is async? Nah, that is some weird thing that I'm writing. Okay. Nah, this is not right. Can I say this is async and then this is awaited? 1, 4, 10. Nope. Nah, I don't think. So theoretically, I guess set timeout itself is actually no. I'll say set timeout is asynchronous, but it's not the async await kind of declaration. It's just that this particular set timeout, this keyword, is understood by JavaScript as asynchronous. That's a very good question, actually. And today I learned because I would have never thought of understanding is set timeout itself is asynchronous or synchronous. But no, now it makes sense that I reason with myself. That particular keyword makes it asynchronous. Okay, but it's a reserved keyword, and the declaration or the syntax as understood by JavaScript says that it cannot be awaited. At least I don't see any example of it. Now I can Google, can we await set timeout? Nope, this is definitely not what I'm looking for. Uh-huh. I don't think anyone thought of it that way. That's something that could be Googled. It should be Googled quite extensively, I guess. I'll have to Google that quite extensively. Thanks for that question, actually. I am glad you asked. Now it has made me think. Now I won't be able to sleep until I have some answers around it. Or I'll have to look at ECMA International TC39 documentation. ECMA, there we go. There, thankfully it was there. Set timeout. Actually, is set timeout a JavaScript thing? It's a window thing. So it's more of a DOM. It's a browser implementation of things. It's not a JavaScript thing. So I think in HTML spec, I guess we'll find set timeout, not in ECMA International. Set timeout. Okay, set timeout would be somewhere here. Like we'll have to read this bit out. It won't be in ECMA International because it's not. I don't think it's a pure JavaScript thing. It's more of a browser implementation. At least that's what it looks like to me right now. Hmm. Okay, cool. Well, we are over time right now. I guess using the word worker is more confusing here. I would not say it's a worker, or at least not a worker, because worker in JavaScript is a completely different thing, or at least the idea is of being something very different. Uh, okay, cool. Anyways, uh, we'll need to research. I can't answer, and I don't want to answer wrong or incorrect. Perfect. Thank you so much for that question. That has awakened my curiosity about set timeouts a bit more about is it an asynchronous or is the whatever. I mean, I would say set timeout is asynchronous, but why can you not await it? I guess that's the question. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's it for, I would say, session one. Hopefully you enjoyed, you learned something new. Uh, I really like this interview style because I've been taking some interviews, and whenever I ask these questions, I love to see how people think. I'm trying to not portray my thinking onto yours, but more like the way of thinking about JavaScript itself. Okay. And that results in some of these interesting questions, I would say, right? This way of thinking results in interesting questions. And I hope to see you all again for the next session, which is right after this one. So currently the time here is 12:06. We can take a 15-minute break and come back. So after 15 minutes, I will put it on the Discord chat about the second session. I will restart the stream 5 minutes early. So like basically 12:10. Actually, no. Let's take 25. Sorry, 15 minutes. So 25. Why did I say 15? I don't know. 15-minute break. Yeah, let's take 15-minute break. So we'll be back at 12:20, but I'll start the session at 12:15 just so that you all can come back and get over all the ads, and then we can start with the next bits where we talk about the event loop, the queues that I was talking about, but the official terminologies of it. Okay. And they are micro task queue, macro task queue. But what is what and how does it work? We'll talk about that. And we'll see some nuances that you might have missed, maybe sometimes. And before I end the session, can I please request you all for feedback? Uh, hmm. I don't think my sessions are on this. So let me confirm that. I'm pretty sure not pretty sure. I think I had not given the request for the session name exactly. So my sessions are not here uh, because I remember my sessions are named with UT. So, and I don't see that. So possibly it's not in here. So I'll find that out. But if you have any feedback, you can share it with me in the next session. Okay, let's take a quick break and we'll be back shortly. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. See you again in 15 minutes, 15-ish minutes. Cool. Cheers. Bye bye.